Hello, Elisha.
Hello, Johnny.
Welcome to our live stream today. We're going to be talking about a pretty interesting topic, something both Elisha and I are pretty passionate about.
Mhm.
We're going to be talking about the metaverse, but specifically about avatars and the need for having interoperability for avatars. Before we do that, let's do a quick introduction. I am Johnny Rodriguez. I'm with Fresh Consulting. Both of us are with Fresh Consulting, freshconsulting.com. And we are part of Fresh Labs, specific kind of department within Fresh Labs where we get to work on a lot of emerging tech and get to play with some bleeding edge, some cutting edge technologies. I'm the strategic innovation director as part of that, and I'll let Elisha
Yeah,
introduce himself.
yeah, I'm the technical innovation director working with Johnny. And I guess we kind of work as kind of yin and yang in the space where you do a lot of like great presentation on the, XR and visual stuff. And I guess you might even talk about, some of the cool stuff you're working on in your own virtual space, which I thought was cool. And I try to cover a lot of technical topics on like how things work behind the scenes, and we're hoping to uh, be educational for the community and also looking for like people that we can work with together through Fresh Labs.
Absolutely, great introduction. So Elisha and I have been doing quite a lot of exploration as it relates to the metaverse and all of these different virtual environments, right? All these different verses that exist out there in the world. Soon there's going to be a podcast where we actually talk about the metaverse, and I was lucky to be a part of that podcast with our CEO Jeff Dance and another really interesting guy from the UK. His name is Dudley Neville Spencer, and he actually has an avatar company um, that's focused on kind of essentially virtual influencers. So there's a lot of, I mean, he's one that was early. There's a lot of companies today that are starting to think about that kind of space. But what we're focusing is not necessarily the virtual influencer space, but more of like how do we represent ourselves as individuals in a virtual environment, and the thought about um, how that's done today versus where we think it needs um, to be able to have kind of this interoperability across metaverses, and then maybe some players that are in that space today, some that stand out. I'm going to be talking a little bit, little teaser. I'm going to be talking a little bit about ReadyPlayerMe. Really excited about that particular platform, company, and what they're doing in the space. Um,
Yeah, and
Elisha, yeah,
the podcast we can find it on Spotify,
mhm.
probably on the Apple one as well, right? I'm gonna put the link for the Spotify one.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Um, it's essentially, yeah, the podcast is called. Yeah, thanks for putting that in there. That's the link. Uh, I was just gonna
Yeah,
quickly
I
put in like a. It's called the future of. That's what you would look for. It's a podcast by Fresh Consulting. The
mhm.
future of, and then yeah, if you, we will have a website up soon. You can go to freshconsulting.com. Under the insights menu, you'll see kind of some details, but that will be dropping, I believe, soon. So at the end of this week, start of next week, dropping once a week. So would be good to kind of tune into that one.
Yeah,
So why don't we dive into this? Let's dive into the metaverse avatar interoperability topic, Elisha. I put together just about 4 slides that I wanted to throw on the screen as we talk about this topic.
yeah. I think before we get there, I think the only term I think people are probably familiar with is just the avatar part, and we're talking
Mm,
about avatar as in our representation of like our visual aspect, right?
yeah,
And we're gonna dive into how does it work with the metaverse,
yeah.
and even with what's the interoperability.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of
Yeah.
terminology. So yeah, let's make sure we define metaverse. Let's sure we define avatar interoperability, and there's probably going to be a lot of new platforms you may or may not have heard of that are part
Mm.
of this. Um, So yeah, I'm hearing a lot of different definitions, Elisha, for the metaverse.
Mhm.
There's a lot of different things that exist for that. Why don't you give me your quick take on the metaverse?
Wow, I think that's a big,
It's a big, expansive
big.
topic.
It is,
Give me your short
yeah.
version.
I think the easier ways to think about it is all these like of 3D virtual spaces, like the Decentraland, Somnium space, and many of people may not have even seen that. Maybe if you think about like Roblox, I'm pretty sure many of you have heard of Roblox and played, maybe not played a game, but seen, kids play those games. Or maybe even as simple as like a Minecraft, like all these 3D character doing something in the space together. I think that's probably the easiest way to think about it. Although I don't think that's like the only definition or that's only limitation. But just think about yourself, your virtual self in another space besides your physical space might be one of the ways to think about it.
Yeah, I like that. I think I would just say it's essentially it's a network of 3D virtual environments or worlds, right? Not a single, multiple that are focused on kind of social connection. So whereas gaming might be more of like focus on the gaming part, a metaverse is more about not necessarily disconnecting you from connectivity with others, but actually bringing new and interesting social connections. And so, uh, yeah, and that can be consumed in a browser, in a mobile app. We think, and a lot of people are claiming that virtual and augmented reality will play a big factor into the immersive nature of the metaverse. And so we're seeing some players in that space today. You talked about Decentraland. There are definitely other big players that are starting to build that foundation of the metaverse. And so if we were to put like the metaverse in the center and then have these different spokes of important elements that make up the metaverse, which we have a video we could probably link to right now that talks about the metaverse and some of the gaps that we need to get to. Um,
Hmm.
but one of those spokes is this idea of how you represent yourself in that environment or those environments, essentially.
Hmm.
Um, and so it might be worth. Would you add anything to that before I dive into the avatar aspect of this, Elisha?
I think that's a great start. And I think 3D is something that gets emphasized. I think because in 3D world, you can do more complex gesture where in the 2D space, you may have to have it pre-drawn. But in 3D space, like I can raise my hands, I can like, fold my fingers, like I can even like do a
Yeah,
high touch. There's a more expression that is tied to my motion directly that represents myself a little bit better than maybe in a 2D space. All these probably have to be pre-drawn. Maybe you can use like some programs to like morph the 2D image to make it look like it's
yeah,
doing
yeah.
something.
Like
But I think
simulating or pre-canned animations or something like that.
yeah, but I think it adds the additional dimension of like depth and things like that. That I think is more difficult to represent in 2D space. So I think that's why a lot of times we talk about it more in 3D space. Although you can mix in the 2D arts that you
Yep.
buy in NFT and stuff like that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
primary, I think it's yourself in the 3D
Yep.
space. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue into this slide here, Elisha. So I don't think you've seen this one yet. So let me explain what we're looking at here. Here are 8 different platforms where I have a representation of myself in a virtual environment. Okay. So top left here, we're looking at my avatar in Oculus's platform. This is their avatar SDK. Um, This has improved since 2018. Every year there's been improvements, and there's been some bigger updates as they released Horizon. But that is my virtual character in that space. The second one looks a little bit more hyper realistic, right? I really dislike how hyper realistic that looks. I think that
You
caught.
just
I
like
think
how you look at yourself, right?
it's too real.
Too
No,
real.
yeah, it interpreted in a way that felt too. There's a principle behind
It's
this
that
actually.
uncanny valley,
Yes, uncanny
right?
valley, exactly, where
Valley.
it's like it's a little too real that it feels weird.
Yeah.
But it probably caught me on a morning where I was really tired, hadn't had my caffeine yet,
Yeah, you
and
look
then
like you're
I'm
about
pretty
to
upset at the world.
murder someone. Yeah.
So that is actually through Spatial.io, a platform I really, really like, and we will probably do some videos on. I'm not going to go one by one on these, but you see some other representations there on the top. The far right one, for example, is my character in one of my favorite PlayStation games, NBA 2K. So I play basketball, and I've created a character that kind of sort of looks like me. Probably more of an ideal version of my character.
Looks taller too,
Looks
right?
taller, more fit,
Bigger and taller. Yeah.
more defined jawline, all the
Yeah.
perfection that I don't have. Bottom left is the Apple Memoji, which I strongly believe will play a big, well, in the same way that Oculus and I guess I should stop calling them Oculus, Meta, the way that Meta represents on the top left a kind of universal avatar. We're seeing that in Apple, on my phone and my Mac. I think when they release their VR, AR kind of mixed reality headset, we're going to see Memoji play a huge factor in that. So that's my character there. So I often use those stickers as I'm responding to people in iMessage, like, oh, let me drop a quick sticker of me waving or being upset or surprised or whatever it might be, right? We have Decentraland, really bright blue, and I look like a Blue's Clues guy, but that's my character there with a little bit of a beard in Decentraland. And then we're getting into these last two, which I mainly will focus on this one that has a little bit of that shimmer and light here. I think this actually is one of my favorite ones, and this is actually through ReadyPlayerMe. And this is kind of this stylized art, something we're probably familiar if you've played with Fortnite, the game Fortnite. There's a very similar art style with that. But this is ReadyPlayerMe, and then this is kind of like more of a two bit, um, kind of a vector. What do you call it? Yeah, more of like a voxel type 2D art. And so my point in showing this, Elisha, is that this is essentially how this is my representation in a virtual world. I can't tell you how frustrating it is for me to have to recreate every time I download a new app, whether it's a game or a platform or even metaverses that exist, right? Decentraland. I had to go in, and I love that there's a bunch of customization, but I often find, number one, it's a hassle. I have to go and like, okay, what do I actually look like? And then I'm like, is this how I think I represent myself, or is this actually a good representation of me? Or do I want to represent myself more professionally or more casual? Do I want to represent myself more this or more that, right? And then every one of these platforms has limitations. There's a lot around the diversity needed in avatar creation, right? And there's problems with that in a lot of these spaces where they're like not able to represent the diversity that exists in the real world, right? And so it's not just a frustrating thing there, but like for example, in my 2K character where I play basketball, I, I've started to purchase. I've used real money, my own money, to be able to build in new characteristics that my character can do. Like, okay, he's actually really good at dunking the basketball or shooting 3 pointers, or he's fast, right? And I have to actually play to build the character to earn coins and to earn money. And then I can actually like jumpstart that. I can like bypass that by paying actual money. The problem is when next year that game comes out, NBA 2K23, everything I've built towards, everything that I've played towards disappears. I don't get to bring this character with me to the next version, next iteration of this game. Nor can I bring that 2K character into something like Spatial or into Meta's Horizon or into Decentraland or Somnium Space or the Sandbox. Like it's essentially a non-interoperable, a single kind of game, single platform avatar, and that's becoming it's becoming a bottleneck. And as we think about the future of the metaverse, what we're hoping to talk about today is this idea that like you don't have to do that, that there will be a few large players, hopefully one, two, or three large players and universally accepted avatar platforms or SDKs for developers where they've essentially integrated where you can create it once and then you can bring that with you everywhere. Think about it as like your Google account. When you go and you have Google single sign on and then it brings in your first and last name, it might bring your avatar with you, right? If they have the Google sign on, a lot of times developers will build it where they'll pull that image, pull the name, last name, pull your title, and they have certain elements built in with that. Have you seen that? I guess before, Elisha, as you've done a lot of app development, web app development, you've done mobile app development, you've done quite a lot from your experience from engineering. But has that been a benefit as you think about like the interoperability, or I guess maybe like login, single sign-on platforms, and how that might create a better experience for users, or an easier integration like for the development platform? I don't know. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it does depend if you're trying to make it easy for users to get onboarded with your application, or if you're trying to create something new where you're not really worried about it. So, for example, I worked on creating a CMS system when I was helping client and when I was also running my own startup. And Avatar is one interesting area, like in CMS, right? Because it would be nice to see, not not maybe not so much yourself, but like your face of your customers, and you can get those data somewhere on the internet. Sometimes you have to upload it yourself. And when you look at like UI designs, and especially from platforms like Dribble, I don't know if people are familiar with the Dribble, where you find a lot
Yep.
of inspirational UI designs. All these designs look so nice because of the avatars, right? Because they're like
Yeah.
pretty people involved, and large circle with the people's face with high resolution
Yeah.
photos, right? That's where we aspire to create, but in reality, you don't have photos. So you just show like big circle with,
Placeholders.
placeholder with the initials of their name.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you look at a list of those things with the UI design to highlight them, it just looks bad at the end of the day. So I did wish like, oh man, I wish those avatars are more like handy, publicly accessible data where if
Yeah.
you enter email or something, it will just pull up the person.
Yeah.
And it's difficult because a lot of platforms are very protective of their data and with the privacy laws and stuff, where a lot of times, like if you design CMS, like a lot of the times your customers have a photo of their face on LinkedIn platform. But
Yep.
obviously you can't just download those data because user consent to upload their avatar on LinkedIn to be used on that platform,
Yep.
but they did not give the consent to be used in other platforms. So does that mean user have to upload the same image over and over to every single platform they sign up? And
Mhm.
that becomes one, annoying for the users, and two, annoying for developers to figure out
Yep.
how do we pull the data? Like every time people sign up to the app, like do we ask people to upload their avatar? Do we ask people to upload their
So you're seeing
customer
this as a
data?
problem even on the web app side. Forget the
Mhm.
metaverse. It's just the
Right.
idea of representing yourself even in 2D, having an avatar. So you're seeing a bigger issue outside of the
Mhm.
metaverse that still probably could benefit from some innovation and some interoperability, cross platform, cross environment type thing, right?
Yep, it's probably
Wow.
one of the most annoying part. And yeah, you can do things like, oh, if you sign in with Google or
Yeah.
Twitter or whatever, we can pull their avatars associated with those accounts.
But it's not
But
always
it's
guaranteed that they have something there
right,
either.
right. It's not guaranteed. It's far from universal,
Mm.
and the images expire by default. So you have to save it in your hard drive, in
Yep.
your cloud services hard drive. So we are storing like thousands of people's avatar. And when they change avatar, well, do we have to go fetch the new avatar from
Mm.
where we got it
That's
from?
true.
And
And
that
then is it at
become
login, or is it
right.
daily? Is it wait, you put a cron job behind it? There's logic involved
Yep.
with all of that.
Yeah. So it is not the easiest part, yet it's one of the most perhaps visible part of the application. So people notice when avatars are missing and ask the questions, and like, hey, my avatar is gone, or hey, I updated my avatar, but I don't see it reflected in your application. So it becomes like something people notice, and it doesn't even affect the functionality of Web 2 apps at all.
Yep.
But it does become very annoying as an
Yeah.
engineer solving the problem.
Yeah. Good point. Thank you for sharing that. I was just gonna put, we had a comment here on YouTube that says from Facings Official that says it's beneficial for a brand's continuity. That's a really good point. As you think about as it relates to brands and being able to have that continuity across that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think what we're thinking about is more of like an individual, right? Like the consumer of a product, let alone the brand is not being represented, but the individual and being able to have continuity across those, right? I can't tell you how many times like I'll meet somebody in one environment and then I'll see them in another environment, or I see their actual photo and I'm like, wait, what? Is this the same person? And so yeah, it is kind of interesting, and but it's continuity is huge. So as we keep diving into this a little bit, Elisha, I think the interoperability is important. So let's go back to a little bit of the metaverse and the avatar, right? The metaverse is not a single app, it's not a single game, it's a network of thousands of virtual worlds where people can visit, because can people visit to play, work, collaborate. I could add socialize, I could say earn, I could put a lot of words, a lot of verbs there essentially. But it essentially just doesn't make sense for users to have to create a new avatar for each game, for each experience. And your avatar should be able to travel with you um, across the metaverse. And so, it doesn't make sense for each virtual world to build their own avatar system. So it's like it's not ideal for the person, and it's also not ideal for the platform builders, right? Um, Another comment here I'm seeing is individuals are brands too. That's a good point, especially in the gaming space. Very, very good point. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Yeah, brands can be an individual. That's true. I mean, and it used to be more of like you'd have to be like a musician or a live streamer on Twitch, or you'd have to be whatever it was, right? You didn't have to be, but that was essentially what was associated to a brand. But nowadays, it's true. You don't have to necessarily come up with a unique name or change your name. You could actually have your brand as your name. Think of like Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, right? A brand with the person. That's like a well-known person. But yeah, it's true. Individuals are brands too. Very, very good point. Appreciate the share on that. And so interoperability, when we talk about interoperability, we're talking about this concept of being able to create an avatar once. Again, thinking about it from the user side, the individual kind of brand, the consumer side. You're creating it once, and then as I'm experiencing different metaverses, I can then say, hey, I'm just going to log in using this metaverse platform. And then my character gets brought in a 3D environment. Maybe it's 2D. There's representations in 2D, representation 3D. But on top of that, Elisha, I think the importance here is that if I buy, for example, a wearable, like maybe I have a certain helmet or hat or shirt, or I buy certain accessories, there's this need of like, why wouldn't I be able to bring that with me into Somnium space, and then also bring that into something like the Mona verse, right? Is another one that I've been seeing recently, or VR chat, um, or alt space, right? It's like thinking about all these different areas essentially where you could bring that. And so what I started to do is starting to look at what are the bigger platforms that exist today. There's actually quite a lot more than this, but what are the platforms that exist specifically from a metaverse standpoint? Some of these have been around for a while. Some are brand new. Some have been unreleased. Some are really closed platforms where you have to go and request access. Like I said, I'm not including things from Apple. Samsung has done some partnership stuff, but even Google has their version of the workspace metaverse, and they have their versions of stuff. So there's a lot of different ones that exist, but I wanted to point out these particular six platforms, and I've done some research across all of these. But there's ReadyPlayerMe, which I think we're going to focus on quite a lot today. There's Meta, right, formerly Facebook. Meta has an avatars SDK that's now available for users. We're starting to see that started to integrate recently with Messenger and with Instagram stories and stuff. So they're starting to bring that, and it's starting to go from platform to platform again within the ecosystem of Meta. And so we're seeing stuff there. People are starting to build towards. Snapchat acquired Bitmoji. That was a pretty cool one inside of Snapchat, but Bitmoji had a lot of integrations, and they have that kit available for developers where you can essentially, stickers and character, you can kind of bring those across. Alter.xyz is kind of a open source platform. It's built by Omnipresence, and their name actually comes with their URL. Genies is a pretty massive one that has partnered with a lot of artists and brands, I guess individuals / brands that are a little bit more well known and have fans and followers. They've built some really cool looking ones as well. And then there's Avatar SDK. So these are kind of the major ones that exist today. And I wanted to specifically focus on Ready Player Me. But before I do that, um, Elisha, have you ever worked with any of these before? Have you heard anything like any kind of insights or news across any of these platforms?
I think I do see like headlines of like more integration or partnerships with
Yeah,
some of the players, but I haven't personally developed like avatar
yeah.
using any of these platforms quite
Got
yet.
it. Got it. Yeah. So it's a lot of opportunity, and we, ideally we're not only consuming and educating you guys and ourselves and our teams here at Fresh Consulting, but we're also like building into some of these, and it might be interesting to think about what we might try from an experimental standpoint, right, for representation.
Yeah, and looks like we need maybe even more abstractive version of avatar that works with all these six avatar platforms.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think
Right.
so, and I think there's a lot of platforms that are wanting to become the single one in that space.
Mm.
So I wanted to talk about this one, Ready Player Me. Lots of ways happening right now. Lots of news tied to this particular platform. You can find them at readyplayer.me. They've been around since 2014. It's actually created by the company Wolf 3D, and I've actually seen them for quite a while. It's an Estonian startup company, and they are basically like right on their homepage. It tells you it's a cross game avatar platform for the metaverse. One avatar, many worlds to explore. They're targeting developers. They're showing you where it's starting to, where it's in, where it's compatible. Somniums, spatial, animes, side quests, and there's actually, this is thousands. This is actually outdated. This is now at 1,400 integrations, and they're calling it like the passport into the metaverse, right? Where you have one single thing that you can bring. Create your avatar and explore virtual worlds with one consistent identity. It's your passport to the metaverse. Your own look. They show you all the things. You can take a selfie like a lot of the platforms do, and it does its best to kind of pre-make your avatar, and then you can go and customize it with 300 plus customizations, things like that. They've been featured in a lot of areas. They are cross compatible, so like if you're a developer, you could be building that in iOS and Android and Unreal Engine, WebGL, Unity. You can do other custom stuff. And there's a lot of highlights with their CEO, Timu, and other integrations. Lots of cool stuff there. So I'm going to talk about them a little bit, but high level, right? One of their goals essentially is to offer users a customized avatar that will carry over across the entire multiverse or metaverse. I think they call it metaverse, but multiverse meaning all of the different metaverses that exist. Players can build their avatar from pictures or from scratch, and they can and then use them across 1,400 apps and games. The truth is, like, I don't know what about 1,300 of these apps are, to be honest. I mean, I can see them and I can see them in the space. I've never used those. But the idea is that I could bring them into those. There's actually quite a lot that I'm interested that are coming. But I would say there's about 50 in this space that I really care about and are really, really interesting. And I'm going to talk about that. Um, some of the notable news, which I'm going to jump into this a little bit. They've been compatible with VR chat for a little bit, I think since 2020, if I'm correct. And they recently announced that they hit, actually, this is 1.5. This should say half a million avatars that have been created through VR chat. They've done some integrations with NFTs, which I want to talk about why this is like starting to get into the not just cross game and cross experience, but this idea of like being able to tie NFTs, right, blockchain into an avatar system that then can be carried into 1,400 apps. And that's a pretty huge deal, and that's really really exciting.
And
They're
to be,
yeah, go ahead.
I have a question on this one.
Yeah,
So with the Ready Player Me, do I go to Ready Player Me and then create my avatar, or is there
yeah,
like different ways of creating avatar that
yeah.
then shows up in the
I'm gonna show exactly how
metaverse?
that works. That's a good point. Let's
Okay.
actually start there. I'm glad you mentioned that. So I'm at Ready Player Me. I have logged in. You go and create your account, and I'm just gonna enter the hub. I am a developer, but I'm not gonna enter through that route. So this is what you see as you log in, and this is me having already created an avatar, right? So I could go and zoom out. And I can see my character move around. I think that's a better representation of me. It's still maybe an ideal version of myself, but a little bit of a no white hair, beard is perfect, eyes are perfect,
and how customizable
yeah,
were they?
they're quite customizable. So let me show you what this would look like. So before I dive into that, this is what it looks like because I've already created. It's already telling you what apps they connect with here on the side. But I
Oh,
can
okay,
actually
okay.
show you my avatars. I've created it once, and then here are the apps I've already integrated with. So I've integrated with Eighthwall. This is Cyber, the Monaverse, Mozilla Hubs, Somnium Space, ReadyPlayerMe, VRChat, VRLand.io. These are the only ones I've integrated with so far. And I can essentially create a new avatar, or I can bring my current one and I can just edit it. So you can see I have, like, for the Monaverse, I actually want to look more professional. I have hyper realism going on there, so I might want to do
Oh,
that. Whereas
interesting.
whereas in
I
Somnium
was
Space, I want to be more casual, right?
oh, interesting. I was thinking the avatar representation, it's gonna look all the same with no
The base
customization.
character is, yeah. So they've kind of thought about that a little bit. If I go to wardrobe, and I'll actually show you this in a minute. These are all their apps. I can see them from A to Z. Every single app they integrate with, and which ones are coming. It's really exciting to kind of look at. Like, oh, what does this mean, right? Like if I go to TCL, that's a television company, entertainment company. So there's going to be some integration with the television, right? And I've gone and looked at some of these websites, like the idea of doing full body workouts and virtual reality with your virtual character, or making friends, social networks, meeting virtual spaces. These are all kind of apps that are coming. You can even go to virtual worlds. Like, what are all the virtual worlds that this is compatible with? And so you can kind of see. Um, so to go back to your question, right? Let's go to my avatars and let's create a new one for Ready Player Me. So I can go in and I can pick. It tells you which ones I have. They're all, as you can tell, they're all have a baseline kind of look. But let's go ahead and create a new one. So this is what it would look like: masculine, feminine, don't specify. Speaking of diversity, I love that they handle that. If I want to pick a file, I can. So that would be taking a photo. Here I am. Let's do this really quick. Let's see if it'll work. Uh, let's see if this will work. Let's try it again. There you go. Let's accept that. Takes 5 to 10 seconds. I could upload one. I could choose not to do this. I could start from scratch. I don't know how it's going to handle my hair and my headphones. And you would imagine that there's some kind of AI. Wow, that actually did pretty dang good. Um, just
Yeah,
from
that looks
starting.
very similar to the ones that you created.
Yeah, exactly. So from
Yeah.
here, you start to see different shades that I can use. It kind of did its best to interpret it. I'm a little bit more pasty white. Um, but you can go and select that. There's essentially these 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 categories, and each of those has its sub categories. So I can choose, what my chin might look like, my eyes, the eye shape, my nose shape, my lip shape. And I won't go through these one by one, but these are the different outfits I can wear. Again, none of these are NFT based yet. And I'll talk about why this is really exciting. But theoretically, I am creating it from scratch. So let's say, like, I do want to sport the Ready Player Me look with a black shirt, similar to what I'm looking at now with my black shirt. And then for a head, I could go and pick a different hairstyle. I guess my hair is a little bit more like that right now versus less spiky like I normally do it. I can also change the color, quite a lot of color for hair. I can go in and change my beard type. I don't know if this is quite my beard. I think my beard's a little bit more elegant than that, but maybe I'm wrong. It's a little bit, maybe a little thicker. But anyway, you get the idea that I could go and select my beard. Maybe I'm a little bit thicker of a beard. Yeah, I'd say it's probably closer to like this. Let's see here. Yeah, let's see. Um, sure,
Oh,
a little bit thicker,
that's covering your lips
covering
and
all of it. Yeah, maybe I'll go thinner. There we go. We'll go that, and I can select the beard color and say it's actually darker than this, or it's black. Um, you get the idea here. Um, and then I could do, yeah, eye color. So it did its best to interpret it. I do have kind of bluish green depending on what I'm wearing, but this is probably closest to my eyes. Eyebrow type. I don't think I have any cool cuts into my eyebrows like that. But I could probably represent it in you could choose to do that. It's probably closer to me. And then glasses. I can wear cool glasses if I wanted. Again, this is creating it from scratch. This is like face paint, face masks, if I want to cover my mouth or not. So it depends on how I want to represent that. Hats or anything that relates to face, right? So if I want to be a panda, or if I want to look at wearing a hat. I could do that. So kind of some representations. And they're planning on building this even further. But let's say I'm done with this, right? I'm happy with this. I can look around like, okay, cool. This looks like me. What you will notice is that I didn't see anything about body size, right? So I don't know if that's actually quite my body type, but I don't see any place that I can do that. I also can't do things like shoes or pants or shirts separate. So you're seeing some limitations. They're at about 300 plus customizations, quite a lot actually compared to others, but there's still some limitations on this. I'm gonna go ahead
Yeah,
and
interesting.
enter
I
the
think
hub here.
the body shape is probably most interesting
Yeah.
part because it changes, based on your age
Yep.
and things like that, where it may be relevant for us with the mature body, but maybe less relevant if the kid enters it, or if you get older, maybe you're not as, you know,
Yep.
in the prime time, and
Yeah.
that's interesting aspect.
So right from in here, yeah. So that's a good point. So I'm hoping, and I'm actually going to talk about that a little bit too, where they're going.
Mm.
Right from here, though, I can download that avatar as a GLB file. That's pretty awesome. So that means I could drop that into something like any environment that like I could bring that into like Blender. I could bring that into Unity. I could bring that into Spatial.io. Lets me take that. And as a matter of fact, I actually do use that. I have a version. I think it's this one that I've downloaded and placed in Spatial, and there it's like a T-shaped body where it's standing with its arms out, so it's ready to be rigged for animation. I could just copy the GLB URL. I can also share it, so you can see as an image. There's an image. I could download it. I could tweet about it. I can make it my profile image, right? So it's doing quite a lot just from creating that first one.
That's
And
pretty
that
cool.
and
Yeah.
now like so I don't actually have to go this route. I could go the route of saying I'm going to go to web.somniumspace.com. See if I can see this. Um, let's go to
I think it's kind of cool that you can download the file,
yeah,
which kind of talks a lot about how interoperable they're trying to make it, and how like developer friendly they're trying to make it, and not just
yeah.
like closed source, like, models that
Very
you
good point.
release that you can't do much with it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's true. I love that I can download too. So this is Somnium Space. This is a metaverse that kind of exists today. They're in beta on web. As a very promising metaverse platform. They're kind of VR first. We'll probably review them later, but some exciting things going on. But a reason I want to show this is there's different routes, right? So I can go the route of saying, okay, what's my avatar look in Somnium Space? And I can do that here. I can go delete it and add a different one. I could set it as my main identity so I can have multiple. But if I go into, maybe it'll load. I'll give it a second here while I'm talking, but I can also go the route of launching the platform like Somnium Space or Spatial or VR Chat, whatever it is. And I can say, let me log in. Let's see if I can log in. I think I'm just Try Johnny. I should probably know my login.
It's funny how all these applications looks like the UI is from like early 2000, with the shades of the buttons and stuff like that. Like
Oh
consistently.
yeah, it's like yeah, it's definitely that. This is probably a
Yeah.
bad example. I probably should have picked a different one here, but I think the point I want to make with this, Elisha, is that I could just go through the app, and then I can actually like I can launch it from here, or I can go through the app and actually go and select, and it'll say, oh, do you want to select this one or do you want to change it up a little bit? And I can still get the same customization that you saw me do here with ReadyPlayerMe. I could do that still within the platform. That's also built into the kind of the integration piece. So I can say for this one I want to wear this other thing, right? And I can set what my default is. So that's how easy it is to create an avatar and create custom looks. What I wanted to talk about essentially is, so this is getting into, again, if I go to explore new apps and show you the list of apps here, there are 1400 apps, coming up on 1400 apps that I can then bring my avatar, whether it's 2D or 3D, with whatever outfit I want into these environments. So that's like pretty awesome. And then it's getting into this other concept of like, well, what about the stuff that I purchased? How do I take that with me? Like, what if I bought a PFP avatar in OpenSea on the Ethereum blockchain, and I want to somehow bring that with me, right? Like, one of the biggest issues we see, if I go to OpenSea right now and I say let's go to the uh, Board Ape Yacht Club, right? Super expensive avatars. Can I bring this avatar into the metaverse? The answer is technically no. I can't actually go in and do anything with these quite yet. And so there are metaverse ready, like Somnium Space Avatar. Like, I could start to search for things like, ooh, I want to actually bring this particular character into Somnium Space. Actually, it's probably a bad example. Yeah, there we go. So I want to bring this particular character. There it is. And I'm buying it, and actually it's tokenized, where if I go into Somnium Space, I could actually bring that in with me. But can I bring that also back into me with Spatial? No. Can I bring it into VR chat? No. And so you're running into this issue of like, people claim metaverse ready, and what they mean by that is that you can download it in 3D. So if I go to one of my current avatars that I actually own, if I go to my actually I won't connect that now, but let's say I go into one of the apps here, it'll say view your chibi ape in 3D and AR. And so they claim like, hey, it's metaverse ready. And what they mean by that is that you can download it as a GLB or an FBX file. But that's still requiring for me to go and put that into Unity or put that into an animation thing or drop it in. It's there's no way of validating that I own that NFT and to bring that with me, right? So there's still like, although there's a lot of innovation and utility happening in the metaverse, quote unquote metaverse, and NFTs where they're saying like, oh, this is cross compatible. The truth is, they're mainly just 3D. And so it's not really cross compatible. But what Ready Player Me has started to do, which is really, really exciting to me, is they've actually started to integrate with NFTs. So what does that mean? So if I go back to Ready Player Me and I go to NFT, Ready Player Me exclusive avatars and wearables. So they started to do things like this. The owners of the original CryptoPunks can redeem a specialty punk avatar that automatically generated based on the original Cyberpunk NFTs. Or this one, hey, if you own a Head 5, Dead Mouse is a artist. They did an NFT drop with called Head 5, can be worn in the Ready Player Me avatar as a head wearable. So they're starting to be like, if you own the NFT and we can authenticate that, then we can bring that into the metaverse. So this is what I mean by that. Like, if I own a Head 5 by Dead Mouse NFT, like this one, if I own that, it's not just a 3D file that I can bring into it. What it means is I can actually like bring that into the metaverse. So of course, Elisha, I own a Dead Mouse Head 5 NFT. So let me show you what that looks like. So what it does, this is what will happen is you'll go in and you'll say wardrobe. So I can go and redeem, and there it is. If you own a Ready Player Me compatible NFT, connect your MetaMask wallet. I've gone and done that. I'm not going to do that right now. I guess I could. I could go in and do that, and I don't have to make sure I'm in the right chain. I'm not going to do that right now, but essentially I've done that. And essentially when it's done, if I own a CryptoPunk or a Head 5, which I own this one, it tells you it's a wearable. And I can choose, like, for example, on my Eighthwall character, it's loading my avatar. It added a brand new option inside of the head section. So I can say that's my character, but I can actually bring in, like, this is where I'm starting to bring in other things. And you'll see there's a brand new head, and it's definitely a creepy looking head. Don't get me wrong. I don't think I actually want to use this. But the point is, I bought an NFT that is compatible with Ready Player Me, which means that I can bring my NFT now for the first time with 1,400 apps. I can bring that NFT with me. That's pretty crazy.
Interesting.
That is
And that
groundbreaking for me.
and what they're doing, I guess, is they scale the NFT from the source
Yep.
file to fit into the space, and then they're attaching to the head. And are
Yep.
they adding like a motion with it, where like as you move your head,
It
it's
is
like
riggable.
move
Yes.
riggable? Okay.
So it is riggable, meaning if it was built in that way, it would handle that. Obviously, the metaverses themselves have to handle doing that. Some of those don't do it, some of them do. Like, for example, spatial.io doesn't move my mouth, but something like Somnium Space would, absolutely does move. And so it would be riggable that way. And so it does have to be built to do that. And that actually just comes from the design of the file. This is what I was talking about with crypto, Ready Player Me Punk. So basically, like, I can go and pay, the floor price right now, by the way, is 50. That's insane.
Oh wow.
Really expensive. So yeah, I don't own this. I definitely don't own this. But you get a sense for, if I did own this, here's my full 3D avatar that I could bring with me. And then there's that head. Even though this was a 2D NFT, that's another piece of innovation, right? Whereas the Dead Mouse Head 5 NFT was a 3D file, the CryptoPunks were 2D. And the way they handle it is they give you this little head that's like a television screen, and then it places the 2D image. And so now I can bring that avatar with me to all those
Wait, so
1400
do
environments.
you buy this Ready Player Me Punk version, or do you buy the
You
Crypto Punk?
essentially automatically get this if you own the CryptoPunk.
Oh,
So it's kind
interesting.
of a, whereas I think Dead Mouse was created to be like that from the beginning. This is them
Got
showing
it.
like, hey, if you do a PFP avatar in OpenSea, you can partner with Ready Player Me and we will make it compatible. Even if you didn't build it that way from the beginning, we're gonna make it compatible. So do you have a chibi ape, or do you have a, all these, crypto bats, right? Whatever it is, you could theoretically bring it in and integrate and partner with Ready Player Me as a NFT collection of PFPs to then be compatible with an interoperable, quote unquote, interoperable avatar platform. Kind of crazy. This one is just a redeemable 3D file essentially, and how they've interpreted that. So
Got it.
again, if I go back to this, let's go back. And I don't want this to save. I know it's cool that I could do that, but I wanted to show again back to NFT. Let's go to the website. This is what they say: compatible with 1,300 plus apps and games. You can connect your wallet. There's a video about it, and then they show you all of it, right? So it's like you can change that out. You can see, each have unique avatars and attributes and things like that come with it. So you can see born in the metaverse, kind of a cool little exciting way to do that. And you can go in and, I've already missed the window, but I theoretically could have gone bought and paid for a crypto punk and then gotten access to it here, which I didn't do. I was late to that, and I wish I would have gone in and jumped in. I did jump in on the Head 5 one though, so I got that one. Even though these are a little bit creepier, I like the art tied to it. But I think the point in mentioning this is, again, and not only is it more and more compatible with more and more apps. I'm talking like hundreds every month. There's about 100. I'm seeing an average of about 100 new integrations that are coming through Ready Player Me. But now they're introducing this concept of bringing in new NFT compatibility. So I'm imagining that theoretically I could buy shoes as an NFT. And if it's integrated, right, I'm going to be looking at collections that are integratable with Ready Player Me, and I could bring those shoes with me. So like Nike might benefit from that, Reebok, Puma, all these companies might benefit from this idea. Like, it's like not only is Ready Player Me more compatible with more apps, it's like, ooh, we want to be the wearable for shoes or for shirts, or for maybe it's a weapon that you bring with me, or maybe it's a companion character like a dog or a cat. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. They actually just got funding, Elisha, in December. They got $13 million. It's their Series A funding, and it was led by some pretty like well-known people. I don't know how to say this, but it's essentially by the company that does Wise and Teleport. Their co-founders. They had the largest part. There was participation from the GitHub co-founder, Samsung Next, which is they used to call it like an innovation hub. So it's actually Samsung's like investment firm, and others. There's like a whole bunch of others, but essentially they got funding. And then with that funding, this is what the CEO said: with the funding, we will scale our partner network further, meaning they're probably going to partner with more NFTs, more enterprise companies, big companies, and will further build out monetization tools for developers to help them make money with avatar customization assets and NFTs. Our goal is to become the default system for the metaverse. So they raise money in December and they basically say, going forward, we're going to get so many more apps and games, and we're going to make it beneficial for developers to leverage it because they can actually customize and monetize it. And our focus is like NFTs and customization, interoperability, and we want to become like the avatar system, the cross-compatible, interoperable avatar system of the metaverse. And in my opinion, they are by far the closest to that, given the amount of apps that they have, given the amount of integrations, given the hype that's being talked about for this platform. Super interesting to keep an eye on. So I thought it would be cool to kind of chat through that a little bit.
Yeah, I think with some of these serious funding, especially from like a GitHub, Samsung, they are like, especially Samsung, we've been covering their activity events and how much time and money they're investing in this space. I think it's pretty smart move for Samsung to kind of jump into this early on
Yep.
compared to like other corporates are probably maybe a little bit more behind or kind of observing from the distance right now. But
Yeah.
I think it's cool to have like compatibility across. It's like even MetaMask. I think people recommend MetaMask because it is the de facto standard. And
Yep.
once you are the first mover in the space, it's hard to lose in the space. Like you're just gonna become more convenient place where people can contribute and build up on the platform. So I think they're pretty well positioned in the space of the avatar
Absolutely.
here. Yeah.
And this is more details on their plan, by the way, where they talk about this is what I love to hear. Custom content creation tools, invest in avatar art through additional styles and here it is, body types, improve avatar performance, flexibility around the API and SDKs. This is the whole in-game asset sales through NFTs, um, more interoperability, essentially, right? And then they want to just massively grow their team. They want to more than double their team in different areas, and they're really like heavily hiring for that kind of stuff. Um, One of the other things that was worth mentioning, Elisha, that I didn't talk about is I talked about the NFTs. I want to talk about Eighthwall really quick. Eighthwall, have you heard of Eighthwall actually?
Actually, no, I don't think I know much about them.
Eighthwall is a company that builds. I would say it's the largest platform of web or kind of web XR, web AR. They build a platform to be able to do that, like to be able to do that with all in the browser. Essentially, like, hey, don't download any apps. We can run pretty amazing augmented reality experiences on your mobile phone and on your tablets, all through the browser. You don't need to do anything there from an app perspective, right? Which sounds kind of gimmicky. It's like, yeah, I've seen that before. But what I think is worth mentioning is that this is like um, the largest platform from this by far out of anybody else from a web AR perspective. And they've partnered and have worked with some of the largest companies that exist. They do things like face tracking, head tracking, hand, full body tracking. They can do environment stuff. So all the stuff that you're normally building in like iOS apps and Android apps and having to use Unity for and like stuff like that, their platform is drastically increasing with the number of things that they can do as the browsers get better, like Safari and Chrome on mobile devices. The more that they can do. But what's worth mentioning is, so yeah, they support A-Frame, 3JS, Babylon, Play Canvas, things that you know, right? I think you're familiar with most of these. Really cool kind of editor platform. But what I love about them is if you saw their, and I'll move this to the side for a second. If you watched the Super Bowl, and I actually documented a lot of this on my LinkedIn, but if you watch the Super Bowl, there were quite a few experiences that were done in that were like AR experiences where they were like, "Hey, scan the QR code and participate." So I did that when there was a live halftime show. My brother and I actually got on there, kind of experienced what was going on, and I could see a real time live feed of a 360-degree environment of the performance from, like Eminem and Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, all these, people that were rapping and singing during the Super Bowl, and I got to experience it there. There was also some other ones with Doritos. There were some Snapchat lenses. There was like quite a lot that happened from an AR perspective. It was like the first time for a Super Bowl, for one of the major kind of sporting events of the world, right? Or I guess in the US primarily. But there was quite a lot of the experiences. And I think about 90 to 95% of those experiences were powered by Eighthwall. So it's a pretty big platform. Like if you're a massive company, you're partnering with Eighthwall to do kind of your AR experiences, because they're getting, again, they show this graph here. They're basically like their reach is a lot higher because they're just sticking to the browser. And so it's a pretty
Yeah.
big platform. And so what's worth mentioning is Eighthwall and ReadyPlayerMe, right? So if I go to their actual, actually, let's go to their article on ReadyPlayerMe and news. I think there's quite a lot of platforms that covered it. I want to see if I could get a bigger platform here, but they also talk about it on their website. But essentially, they joined forces, and that becomes huge. So like they went from being a VR mainly, VR kind of 3D environment kind of environment, to like, hey, we actually do web for the first time. So I do want
Yeah.
to show that really quick. Go ahead.
I think it's also with the innovation with our phones that can handle, I think, a lot of complex stuff now on device and even through the browser. Like the other day, I was surprised when I found this website that let you try your glasses on. And I
Mhm.
thought I was going to be forced to download the app because that's been how things used to be. But instead, it just launched Safari web browser on my iPhone, and I didn't have to download the application. And I feel like that just a little bit of like friction that you remove from going from
Yep.
downloading something and like, "Ugh, I have to sign up again or I have to download this again, to just like, oh, it just shows up on the web, and like you don't really have an option to even not use it because it's right there. And I think
Yeah.
that kind of closed the gap between like people doing it and not doing it. And I think we probably saw a similar thing happen with the Instagram, right? Where it used to be that you take a photo on maybe DSLR camera, edit things up, and then you go from a camera to Photoshop to then some website to showcase the photo you took.
Yep.
But with the Instagram, like just because all the computing power is in your hand, like people would just take a photo and then
Yeah.
just upload straight up. Just like a little bit of friction
It's
removed.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's about reduction of friction for sure. And I think like as it relates to Eighthwall, I think the reason I'm excited for it is like it's a whole new realm that Ready Player Me has never, like, you can't really count numbers at that. You can't say it's 1400 apps or 1400, games. It becomes a platform integration where now that platform, Eighth Wall, as they're building experiences for customers, right? If you're a business, this is huge news for you, because that means that people can bring in their avatars for really interesting, not just metaverse related things, but like immersive interactivity for advertisement that might include AR, or for live experiences, right? If I was at the Super Bowl, like I might have been able to place my character dancing with Eminem or Dr. Dre or 50 Cent or whatever, right? Dancing, and I could have recorded it. So let me show you what this looks like. By the way, let me turn this one off, and let's turn this one on. Let's go this route. Let's see if this will work. Let's go this breakdown. There we go. So this is me. Let me see if I can pause this. Let me show you what we're actually looking at here. Okay. So this is actually on Eighthwall. This is them announcing it. I can go and run this right away. So I went to my browser, went to Eighthwall in their announcement, and it said like, oh, you could try this now. So I launched Eighthwall. It prompted me to log in with my Ready Player Me account. I did, and then it basically launched this AR experience in the browser. Again, eighthwall.eighthwall.app. So it's all in the browser. and it let me, again, all these characters are riggable, right? So it let me use my joystick just like on the screen to move my character around. By the way, this is my desk, my messy desk. I'm actually moving my little character. He's running, and I could have
Wow.
jumped around and had them, and it's scanning the space, right, like just like you would expect, where it would avoid objects, and it has occlusion and things like that. um, and it's just a small example of what that might be, but again, I think we're going to start to see more and more from an AR perspective of being able to place yourself in environments where you're now a part of that experience, and it's like interacting with others. So like, imagine if Pokemon Go, um, Pokemon Go integrated with Eighthwall, right? It's not an app. Or if Pokemon Go integrated with Ready Player Me, right? From an AR perspective, that might mean instead of it being first person of catching Pokemon, it might be third person where you'd actually see that. Or when you're battling other trainers, your character, instead of it being the Pokemon character, it would be your Ready Player Me character playing against other trainers and gyms and things like that. I'm just trying to give an applicable example there, I think, of what something that we might be more used to. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
so I think the point is,
that would be pretty cool.
yeah, good.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
pretty cool.
So,
Yeah, I don't know if
mhm.
you actually seen the new Pokemon game that just got released like a month ago, Pokemon Arceus.
I've
Arceus.
heard of it. I haven't played it.
Yeah, it's basically the third person. It's a Nintendo Switch game. It's basically third person.
Oh.
I guess Pokemon catching and battling, where
Oh, so kind
you
of like what we're talking about.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I could almost see the future where even those games have an option to like, oh, bring your avatar instead of
Yep.
the game prepared avatar and
Yep.
connect with the Ready Player Me, or maybe even FPS games, right?
Yeah.
Not FPS, I guess TPS, third person shooting.
Yeah, I
Like you
guess
can
technically, yeah.
yeah, replace a game avatar with yourself. So there's even coordination possibly with the console games or PC games, not just like a metaverse games. It could be like a game where you can bring in, right? So that's a kind of expansion that we can probably hope to see with the new funding with the Ready Player
Yes,
Me.
exactly. I think that if there starts to be a de facto kind of default avatar system, then it allows companies like Sony that might be like, you know what? Let's build this into the next 2K game. And they can bring their character with them, right? And so now when I'm playing against real NBA players, right, or whatever, like in this game, I actually have my character that looks like me. And we don't run into this, what we talked about earlier, right? This example of like, oh man, like I have to build a whole brand new one, right? Most likely we're going to continue to see like Meta's platform get bigger. We're going to see Apple's platform get bigger, probably Google. All the big tech companies will probably have theirs, and they're going to compete with companies like Ready Player Me to become the de facto default avatar system. But this gives you a sense. This is from 6 days ago, Elisha, from their CEO, Ready Player Me. There are now almost 1,400 companies using Ready Player Me avatars in their products. We're becoming the default avatar system for worlds. Wild. And they're talking about hiring. But if you look at this graph, right? The number of apps that have started to adopt it. And again, what this doesn't show is the number of brands that have started to adopt it, right? We're seeing TV companies. We talked about um, Samsung. I think it was Samsung Next, right? So you're seeing like another big tech company there. The metaverse ones are the big ones to me. Spatial, Somnium Space. Like again, if we go back to that for one quick second and go to uh, let's just go back over to the Ready Player Me for a second and just show the hub of all the metaverse apps. These are apps that I constantly have been leveraging. So from a virtual standpoint, the ones I'm most familiar with are Somnium Space, VR Chat, VRLand.io. I've started to look at Tivoli Cloud VR. Some of these haven't really launched yet. Monaverse is a new one from a couple weeks ago for me, as well as Cyber. And all of these essentially are competitors. They might focus on different parts of the metaverse, where it's like music, arts, and entertainment, or it's gallery based, or it's art based, or it's high resolution, NFT galleries. Somnium Space, it's its own world of itself. But we're gonna see more and more there. I would love to see that by the end of this year. I'd love to see Decentraland in here. I'd love to see Spatial is a newer one, but I'd love to see some more and especially as it relates to gaming, right? I think I'd love to see more than just kind of three really unknown kind of gaming platforms. That's a big opportunity from them. There's definitely some AR VR ones, but not from a standard kind of gaming perspective. Um, and then we'll
Yeah.
start. I would love to see more tech companies adopt that as well. So
I think perhaps a tricky part would be like one, the visual integrity between the spaces, right? Like Decentraland and some
yeah,
worlds are very boxy, and maybe there is some particular like interest in preserving um, possibly the look. But even then, I feel like as long as there's money to be made, I feel like some virtual spaces are like, we don't care about visual integrity, just bring them in.
yeah,
To get more users, that's why users want. And if you don't want to be the one that gets stale over time, maybe you have to adapt over time. And I think another potential problem might be because it looks like a higher definition graphic. I know that there are limitations with your computing power or the
yep,
browser power, and you may not be able to have, like in Decentraland, for example, sometimes how much you show in one space kind of dictates how much memory that you can use. Like in games, recent games like PS5, Xbox Series X, you can see like to the far distance and they look pretty good. But if you look at games like Nintendo Switch games, and this was a problem in the Pokemon Arceus, the graphics didn't look good. And suddenly things pop in and pop out because of the drawing distance that you have within the game space. And if some virtual worlds like Decentraland is designed to show up to like this much drawing distance, but suddenly we see flux of high definition avatars that start to show up, that they may have to even like scale down how much distance they draw because they can't draw that much in one screen at a time if there are too many things showing in the screen, and if you want to cater to like a low spec hardware, especially on the browser experiences. So that will be the interesting technical question that
yeah.
the companies have to answer. Because I know in the game engines, that's like one of the big decisions you have to make. Like, how much do you draw? How much definition do we blur out so
It's
it
true.
doesn't quite look good, but it's there? Things like that.
It's a very good point, and which is why I think I'm really interested in. I think I might have mentioned this recently, and I'll share this as well, Elisha. I'm interested in the interoperability is such a key thing, and I think like adaptability by environment or experience is going to be important. This is a company called Metamundo. They want to be like OpenSea, but for metaverse interoperability, essentially, right? So it's a 3D NFT marketplace for building. So they want to basically be, and they've already partnered, by the way, with Decentraland, Crypto Voxels, Spatial, Somnium Space. These are actual partnerships, not just like, hey, they know about it. There's more, but what they want to do is like whatever you buy in their particular metaverse environment. Now this is the graphic I love. Where is it? Let me go to the Meta portal. This is a graphic I really love. To your point, right? This idea of like when you're buying an avatar, maybe it's a Ready Player Me, and they actually are in talks with Ready Player Me for this. But the idea is that like if one platform has more hyper realism, then it would adapt that NFT avatar into hyper realism. If it's more voxel, like the sandbox and crypto voxel and things like that, then it would adapt that. But the idea is that it's a single on the blockchain 3D asset that is again it's got its blockchain receipt, but it's adaptable essentially, right? They want to basically be they basically want to do like you buy it once and it goes with her essentially.
Does that
Um,
mean they
and so
prepare different assets ahead of time when you
they are
buy
going
Avatar?
so that they are trying to make this for the idea is that they're going to have like the equivalent of like Unity or the equivalent of like a Blender where it's essentially a platform that when you create it, which will have integrations to Blender and stuff like that, the idea is that you will be able to create it once and then it will automatically adapt to the other platforms. And so when you sell the NFT, it actually gives you access and direct integrations into these platforms. So I think the best way to look at it is if you go over to their not that one. If you go over to their Medium account, and I'll scroll over. This is September. One of my favorite things here. Yeah. So a lot of the stuff that we believe, right? We believe in decentralized creator economies, the future web. Our goal is to empower 3D creators, so that's their target, to generate new revenue streams by giving them more ownership and control over their IP. We'll equip creators with a suite of tools that help build a following, stay connected with their community, monetize their creation, and control their IP, so they could be building. Okay, central to our mission is the core to unlocking the potential of the metaverse is ensuring the interoperability of digital creations across different virtual environments. As a creator, if you design and build a spaceship, we want to make sure that that spaceship is capable and usable in many different games or virtual environments as possible. To make this possible, we're currently working on establishing partnerships with key players, exploring how we can, and this is the part I love, how we can develop a new open source standards, as well as contributing to enhancing existing protocols to deliver to creator best in class interoperability for their creations. So when we talk about like bridge building, like creating the connections with the right partners and building bridges, they are at least claiming that. It's something to keep an eye on. We'll look at it, but this is the first of its kind that I've seen. As we think about avatars, right? That's Ready Player Me and those other players we talked about. This is more about like maybe the assets that you'll take with you, like wearables or like vehicles or objects that essentially, like as you're selling them, they could actually be cross-compatible avatars, cross-compatible. And so it's a trend for sure. It's a trend of what we're seeing. And again, we'll want to keep an eye on like how that progresses, how that advances over time. But definitely some interesting things there to be looking at as it relates to the interoperability and cross-compatibility in the metaverse.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, and I think I'm personally interested in more freedom in avatar creations because I can see a world where not only that you create avatar representation of yourself, but you could create like different like characters, like probably more common in mods where like, oh, you can play this game but as like a Neo from Matrix or Link from the Zelda, like kind
Yeah,
of like playing with the mod aspect of having freedom in creating your own like look that you want that may mimic like a character in a game or
yeah,
actor in a movie, and
interesting.
then have like a freedom where like I'm playing this game but as this different character from the fictional world. And I think it speaks to a lot of people who are more into that as opposed to having their self in the
Very good
space.
point.
Especially just for some people, they're not interested in like having themselves look
Hmm.
alike person in the space. They want to look like different from the reality because that's what they wish to be instead of like
Very good point.
real representation. I think we're pretty comfortable with ourselves, but I think in a wider spectrum of a diversity, some people wish to be a little bit different
Hmm.
version of themselves. So yeah, I'm looking forward to having different avatar, and I think it speaks a lot for like Asian community culture because of how invested we are in creating games. Like, Japan creates a lot of games, and Nintendo has a system of me that makes you look like the character. And a lot of Korean gaming companies create MMORPGs where you can customize yourself and buy, the in-game avatars. And you can see, like, depending on where it's developed, like you can see the trend of like face looking more like an Asian or more like a Western style faces. And I think I still see more avatars leaning towards certain direction and not quite handling the wider spectrum of audience where some of them may want to look more like Asians or Europeans or Western, they tend to be a little bit more skewed and like, okay, I can see this is like Western style. Like, oh, I can see this is more Asian style. And not
That's
only in yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's a really good point. Like, so I don't know if you saw in the news recently about the couple from India that was planning their metaverse wedding.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've
I think you
seen
shared that with me.
one wedding. Yeah, that's already done, right? In the
Yeah, this was
which space
one.
was it?
Yeah, there's definitely like a few. There's one in Decentraland, I know, but the one that I think was more recently in the news, and I'll just share this briefly, is to your point. This was the metaverse wedding. They actually used Ready Player Me. Speaking of Ready Player Me, and one of the things they talk about here is what they end up saying is that they liked this. Their guests were also customizing their avatars, and so like their father passed away, so they created a different, like they essentially recreated their father in that space.
Interesting.
But
Interesting.
one of the things they talked about was like when we actually do the wedding, we actually need to be wearing more traditional clothing,
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
platform doesn't actually handle that. And
yeah,
so to your point, they were like, "Hey, create your avatars. This is cool." But when it comes to the actual like ceremony part, they don't handle a lot of the traditional like Indian clothing. I guess for this particular
yeah.
kind of wedding
It's
gathering, right?
it's pretty much like American casual,
Yeah,
the clothes that 20 years to 30 years old wear,
yeah,
kind of clothes, right? Yeah,
yeah. So it is a problem. I think. So yeah, you're speaking to like a few key important things. So it's like further expansion of um, representation and diversity that actually exists in the real world. That's going to be really hard. It can't be
Mhm.
300 elements of customization. It has to
Right.
be 3,000 or 30,000. And there has to be ways to get to that. We don't want just more menus either, right? It's interpreting things, it's being able to like get into the right categories. There's a lot of innovation that can still happen there. You also talked about like the part of maybe I don't want myself to be represented as myself that looks like me.
Mhm.
And it's like the closer it looks like me, that actually might be bad. Be represented. I might want to be as a dragon or like whatever character, whatever I want, right? As a character. And a lot of these platforms do handle that. But as it relates to the avatar interoperability, that's going to be key. Is like people are not going to always want to do that. Maybe Ready Player Me will handle humans, but then it can handle those other kind of external or like third, not third party, but like the different other looks, right? Of like if it's animals, if it's different things, or like you said, clothing from 20 to 30 years, it might be more of futuristic stuff where I want to be wearing uh, you know, strange looking clothing, and that's how I want to be represented. Um, one of the things that's
Yeah.
talked about in this podcast that's coming in from Dudley, who's again a virtual influencer agency. He talks about the need to verify who you are. So whether I represent myself as a dragon, as an animal, or myself, what we don't want is a 40, 50 guy with a 15-year-old, 13-year-old character that is talking to other 12 to 13-year-olds. And that starts to introduce obviously a lot of, but that's this idea where I think companies like Ready Player Me and Meta and Apple and Google, all these companies will have to eventually do this, but this element of like verification of who you are. So like imagine when I create my Ready Player Me thing, instead of it like allowing me to go and customize my look, it says, hey, let's validate your ID like the way that these other apps do, right? Put in your driver's license. Let's see who you are. Let's see what your background. There's an element of validating who you are first, your age, things like that, and then being able to customize whether you want it to look like you or not. And people have not built that built into this verification kind of process. So that is talked about a little bit in the in the
Yeah.
podcast, and something maybe to listen to.
Yeah, I think I see kind of opposing the worlds where like, in game, like you can be whoever you want. And I think that's the point of
Hmm.
sometimes playing the game, right? Like you're not trying to be you're trying to be like something different. Like you're the warrior and mighty, or maybe you're the magician
Yeah.
and sassy, right? And you're not trying to tell other people, hey, I'm actually like, 30-year-old. We're working in the software
No.
industry. Like
No.
You may not even want to do that, but with the other side of the world, it's like, oh, we need to verify who you are. We need to, make sure like you're represented as who you are more realistically. And it'll be interesting to see, is it going to be something people can choose? Like, can I be different than myself in Decentraland? Or if I'm going to use Ready Player Me, do I have to verify who I am? And it kind of creates a conflict also with the decentralized nature of
Mm.
it's really just your wallet, and you can have multiple wallets.
Mhm.
And what does it mean to tie your identity to this hash, right? Is
Yeah.
it going to store my information as a real person into the wallet,
Interesting.
or is it going to keep censorship out of my world and be more free? And I know there's like the whole physical protection layer that we need to add, right, to ensure safety. It's not just uncensored world where we can plan to have to attack someone, right, just because it's like anonymous. That doesn't mean like we should create the world where like anyone can plan anything dangerous in our world, because it's still tied to physical moral that we have. Like, we still can't get away from our own governments, or
Mhm.
the boundary. Like, yeah, we can pretend to be free in the virtual space, but we still have passports. We still have the restriction on where we can be at certain time. So that would be the interesting question as we try to like figure out the balance of the conflict, and where does the world want to be in versus where does company in Europe, or the jurisdictions in Europe, which tends to be more strict than most other, I think, countries around like privacy policy and things like that. Where do they want to be? Where do US want to be? Or should that even be part of the equation in this centralized world? So that would be the interesting question to follow along this discussion of like, wow,
Yeah.
this is cool tech, but what does that
Yep.
mean?
What does that mean? Yep. Lots to be there's lots to be innovated on. Probably, yeah, I would hate to see the government get involved with that, but my personal opinion is like I can imagine there being a time where they're like, "Okay, here's your ID and then here's your virtual ID and then you could take that with you and it's like government issued virtual ID that now you could take." I mean, I could see benefits, but I also see like that being kind of going against the this concept of decentralized and all of that and how you represent yourself and individuality. It goes into so many other things, right? Morals, beliefs, and things like that. But yeah, it's exciting. I mean, I think we do need to solve the avatar issue for the metaverse. The future of what the metaverse will be, for it to be for it to be effective and to allow us to kind of go from platform to platform. I do think the avatar thing will probably be the biggest point of discussion. Um, how you represent yourself, can you bring it to other platforms? Are the things that you've earned or the things that you've purchased, can they come with you or not? Those are kind of the bigger questions, and then you have this the kind of the foundation kind of moving parts in the background. Have I validated who I am? Does this represent me in the way that I want to be represented and to the extent that I want to represent myself, right? And then all the other things that you just talked about. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on that. So it's a topic of discussion I'm sure we'll come back to as we talk about the metaverse, as we
Mhm,
talk about avatars, and as we talk about interoperability, right? Three buzzwords and three kind of unique words
mhm.
as we kind of presented today. But this metaverse avatar interoperability is a kind of fun, interesting point of discussion.
Yeah,
So
and we do these type of content every week, so
yep,
make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also follow us individually on Twitter, and as long as you do that, you're most likely in the know of what's happening. And
yep,
we tend to stream or push out the video around this time
yep,
as well.
perfect. Alrighty.
Cool.
And with that, we will close it out.
Yep. Thank you for joining the stream.